Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, warriors. As of late, I have had this question presented to me a number of times, so I thought it was time to address it. On that topic, if you do have any questions that you would like to ask me anything. Get in touch with me via comments, DMs, or through the support group there on Facebook. And the way to do that is in the description below. And shoot off a question to me, and I can do a video that will help not only you, but probably other people that are sitting in the same energy wondering the exact same question. So the question that I have had recently a number of times is, what is a spiritual emergency and what can I do about it? So I'm going to answer this question through my own personal experience and my own research into the subject matter, because I needed to navigate myself through it probably 4 times as of last year. But before I do, I want to give some chronological happenings, certain events that led up to it, because it's important to note these things so that you don't fall into the same pitfalls perhaps that I did. In September 2021, I had my Kundalini. And after that, I began the year of the tear, and I've written a lot on this topic of grief and the processing. The dam had burst, and I was processing all of those emotions that I hadn't processed my entire life. A lot of grief, a lot of pain, a lot of sorrow, and that's what the awakening does. It's like squeezing out. The Kundalini energy is coming along and squeezing out like a ketchup sachet all of the stuff that's not in alignment with your highest and greatest good. So I was not, previous to that, very good with emotions. I masked emotions behind, actual masking and putting on a happy face, as well as using a lot of substances, smoking, alcohol, cannabis, pharmaceuticals, food, toxic relationships, you name it. I spread it out so it didn't look like any one particular thing was too much of an issue, because I used so many things to dam up all the emotions that were inside of me. So when I began my Kundalini, those tears just started to flow and started to flow and started to flow. And while on the one hand, I kind of got used to every single day having a purge and what's known as oscillations, which is when the energy is moving through your system and clearing stuff out, it got a bit tiresome, to be honest. And so I started seeking treatments to help facilitate clearing it out faster. I was I want this done faster kind of person. You may have noticed I go balls to the wall when I put my mind to something. I'm very disciplined, and I have a lot of persistence. And then I fall down. Burnout. So it's go, 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 and burnout. Go, 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 and burnout. And that's kind of the way I've always been. And it's no different on this awakening path. It's the Kundalini has taught me more times than not that I need to slow down and rest. I do that when I'm forced to. It's kind of like the spirit comes along and puts me in my place and holds me still for a period of time so that I can do the work that I don't enjoy doing. And that includes, yin yoga. I don't actually enjoy yin yoga because it does help facilitate the release of a lot of stuff. It's not something that I'm like, yay, I get to do yoga now. It's so much fun, because to me it's stillness, and in stillness is not my comfort zone. But I practice it because it works. I practice it because it's cultivating a greater degree of that balance in those energies between the masculine of go, go, go and the feminine of rest, receive, relax, restore, all of the words. In my masculine energy, I was like, okay, how can I speed this process along? How can I make this purging happen faster and clear out? Because I was experiencing a lot of PTSD, and it wasn't enjoyable. The PTSD started after I lost my best friend, and then I lost my relationship with my mother. I had to cut her off after all my life trying to hold this relationship together, and finally the things that she said to me were too cruel and too horrible, and then I asked for a divorce, and so my 3 most important people in my life, and I was trauma bonded to all of them, were gone, which caused a lot of PTSD symptoms, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, which are similar in nature. Complex is more long-term, prolonged, spread out, where PTSD is more like one singular event happens. So singular event, loss. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, tied into that, triggering all my childhood abandonment wounds. And I just did a video yesterday on my adoption at age 2.5. So I have a lot of abandonment wounds. And so when I hold on to people, I hold on to them for dear life, and I don't want to lose them. I guess that's called anxious attachment style. And I'm learning a lot about that. So I was experiencing so much discomfort mentally, emotionally, even physically, that I sought solutions outside of the norm, because I had quit all of my original coping mechanisms, and all this stuff, the dam being burst and all this stuff coming out and flooding me constantly. I was overwhelmed. So I saw it in 2022, the summer of 2022. I went to a Cambo retreat, and I've done a couple videos on Cambo, and I kind of now sit a little bit on the fence on whether or not that was a good decision for me. And I know a lot of people swear by Cambo as a means to help purge and help release things and integrate things in change, anxiety, PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, all of these types of things in a much more rapid way than other therapies that haven't worked. For example, I was on and off antidepressants all of my life. And all those did was exactly dam up what was needing to be released. So on the one hand, I would say Cambo is an excellent natural medicine, plant medicine it's called, even though it comes from a frog, and the frog has no awareness of any kind of enemies, so it doesn't have an adrenal system that's activated like we do. So it's a very calming and detoxifying and purging treatment. It's not at all pleasant, it's not about going and having like a happy trip or anything. It's literally about purging, and that's what you do. So the process of Cambo should be taken very seriously. Do contemplate it. If you're called to this medicine, and I suppose I was called to this medicine, then you do it. But do your research. Please do a lot of research before going down this route. And when I had Cambo, it opened up a channel in me that had been long closed off. I think I was probably always born with certain spiritual gifts, just like anyone else, but because of the way that I was raised, it was unsafe to have those gifts. Those gifts would have caused me problems. I would have gotten punished for saying or knowing things or feeling things or being aware of things that I shouldn't have been aware of, that were otherworldly, or it was very triggering to my narcissistic mother for me to be so observant as well as so seeing through her. She didn't like that at all. So I learned over years to mask all of that and shove all these gifts and whatnot down and keep my mouth shut. Grin and bear it. Well, I did a lot of grinning and bearing it and trying as hard as I could to be stoic and stone-like and holding it all in. And so when I had Cambo, it opened a channel for me that flooded my system with spiritual gifts coming back online that I completely and utterly didn't know how to manage. And so that's why I give a little bit of a warning when it comes to Cambo, because when your spiritual gifts come on like that. And it was like that. Within a minute of doing the purges, I was speaking in light language for the first time. I didn't no idea what was happening. It's like speaking in tongues. I don't speak light language on camera. I do a lot of videos with my hands doing light language, but I'm not quite confident. I don't have the conviction yet to be able to speak fully. I've done a few little videos where I speak light language, which is also known as talking in tongues. And we all light workers, starseeds, healers, carry with us a persecution template. And so when you start speaking in tongues and you've been repressing all of this your whole life, or speaking light language, it's terrifying, because you're like, people are going to judge me. People are going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to be thrown in an institution. And so you try to keep this stuff under wraps. And so when these spiritual gifts came online, it took me time to integrate them into my reality. It took me time to understand what was happening, because this channel that had opened myself to communications with a lot of my ancestors and spirit, as well as clairaudience, hearing things that I had never heard before, as well as clairvoyance, like jacked up to full, seeing things. And how I see things is like mini movie clips in my mind's eye, and seeing things on the 5D, and telecommunication, understanding what people were thinking, and that is its own kind of like what is happening to me. And a bunch of other more subtle things that I really didn't understand at all. And so with that channel open, it's kind of like turning on a porch light in the middle of the dark. And when you turn on a porch light, you're going to attract all kinds of things. And you're not going to only attract light things, you're going to attract icky things too. It left me wide open to a world I was completely unprepared for, with negative energies and more anxiety and more panic and other things. So on the one hand, while I was looking to heal the PTSD, and for a stretch it did kind of seem to stabilize, but with this channel that was now open, I was attracting things on the spiritual realms that I was not prepared to deal with. So this continued on for about, I guess, 8 months or so, and I decided that I was going to try another treatment that I don't recommend. It was offered to me through some healers, and listen, nothing against the healers, they're lovely people, but not all treatments are necessarily good for you if you're going through a Kundalini awakening, because you're already on an accelerated healing path. The twin flame journey, if you're on the twin flame journey, is you're already going speed of like crazy that you can barely keep up with. Like if you see the photographs of my face over the last 4 years, my face completely changes to unrecognizable to me. You may see it as like, oh look, she's just lost weight, but I'm looking at it like, who is that person? Who's that person? They're like, what is happening? I equate the twin flame journey a little bit like that movie The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, where he hops into a machine and a fly flies in, and then he morphs into the two. And so twin flame journey is kind of like hopping into that machine with your twin on the 5D level, and your energies are merging together, and you're looking at yourself, and you're thinking things, and you're doing things, and you're eating things, and you're behaving in ways, and you're like, what is happening? Who am I? And it's happening so fast that you can barely keep up with it. Quantum leaps of consciousness shifts in like weeks. So when I did this other treatment that I had done, thinking that it would potentially pull me up out of the grief and into some more stability, it actually had the opposite effect, because it opened that channel even wider. So I bing, 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 take this as a warning, warning, warning. If you are on the twin flame journey, if you start looking for alternative healings, thinking that it might speed things along, you might be asking for a little bit of trouble. And learn from my mistakes, perhaps, and just accept that it's divine time and everything's going to happen when it's meant to happen in a divine order. So in saying that, I understand that on my soul's journey, I did these things and it was predetermined for me to do these things so I could come to you and say, don't do these things. So I accept my mistakes in seeking alternative treatments to speed up through different plant medicines this process. And speeding up the process last February opened that channel so wide and turned my brightness up so high that I attracted a lot of spirits, I should say, and negative energies, and I didn't have a clue what any of those things were. I didn't know I could see spirits that had passed on. I didn't know about negative energies or of course I knew that there was negative stuff out there, and I've been practicing as a Reiki Master healings and shieldings and clearings, and I did a video just the other day on spiritual work. Please go check that out, because that gives you a lot of tips and tools on what to do when you go down this path into the dark stuff. Last March, I had a spirit that had passed over, that had hopped on to my energy, and I didn't understand what was happening. And I had a lot of negative energies and entities that were kind of around me all the time, and I didn't know what was happening to me. And I didn't have at the time enough of discipline when it came to spiritual hygiene, and enough knowledge when it came to Kundalini syndrome or spiritual emergency or spiritual crisis. I'd never even heard of these terms. So I was completely ill-prepared to deal with what I was dealing with. And at the same time, in my 3D world, my now ex-husband, we were in a state of separation at the time, decided that was a perfect time to confess all his truths to me, which broke my brain. Just broke my brain. Like I couldn't comprehend what was being said to me. The things that were it was beyond. It was beyond anything my brain. I still struggle to this day, a year later, to fully comprehend. And I can't get into all of them, but for example, he admitted that he had never actually loved me. He was in love with somebody else the entire marriage. And 15 years is a long time to be with somebody that you believe is your person, and then to discover that kind of information. I couldn't comprehend it. So in my world around me, I was dealing with all these truths that made absolutely no sense to me. I was dealing with excruciating pain in my tooth that became more exacerbated the more stressed I got and the more intense the energy was. And I had these negative entities circling me around. I was plummeted into absolute darkness. To say that I lost touch with reality is absolutely spot on. I was near psychosis. I in desperation to try to find answers to what was happening to me, because I couldn't understand anything. I was willing to look at any possibility as out there and as crazy as they come. I at one stage thought, is it possible somebody is targeting me? And people talk about this term, targeted individuals. And no, I don't believe that was the case, but I can certainly understand why other people who are undergoing a spiritual emergency would think that they're being targeted, because their body is having pains, they're things are happening in their body that they seem to have no control over. I was having chest pains routinely. It felt like my chest was being crushed. Excruciating pain here. Anxiety and panic attacks like I'd never experienced in my entire life. And on top of that, seeing and hearing things that other people couldn't see or hear, and I knew other people couldn't see or hear them. So I was very cognizant of the fact that something is happening here that is beyond, and sheer terror. And at the same time as all of that, I started releasing repressed memories. And I can only say that these repressed memories were so violent and so disturbing. There's a reason why we repress certain memories, and I can't get into detail of those memories because they're too disturbing and they would be far too triggering for people. But the nature in which they expressed themselves was not like I was just sitting down and all of a sudden I'd have an odd memory. They came with violent releases of physical memory. My body would start shaking uncontrollably and violently, and the tears were not normal, just crying. It was like wailing, and I was in a very bad way, and I didn't know what was happening to me was the worst, because the mind desperately wants to hold on to some semblance of reality. And so the thoughts that I was having were very intrusive thoughts. The worst of the worst is what I was thinking. So that's why I have a deep understanding and a deep compassion to people that are in the throes of darkness and feeling like they have no escape, and that ultimately death is imminent. My son called in deep concern for me, called for an ambulance because he understandably thought that was the best thing to do, and unfortunately exacerbated the situation for me. It was not soothing at all, and I knew enough that I was having a spiritual experience, and I've had enough visits to the mental wards in hospitals throughout my life because I have always voluntarily brought myself into emergency if ever I was having any type of suicidal ideation, which is something that I've had throughout my entire life, because when you are being abused severely as a child and you have no escape, and nobody's there to listen to you or believe you, the only place your mind can go in a disassociated state is to dream of death as an escape. So I knew that this wasn't that, because of these spirits that I was also seeing that were also terrified of the hospital. And I warn people of this because a lot of times, if you are on a spiritual awakening path and you go into a spiritual emergency, it's only natural that you might end up thinking that you need to go to the emergency, but they're not prepared to deal with spiritual awakenings. They're not prepared to deal with spiritual emergencies or spiritual crisis. They are prepared to deal with psychosis. They're prepared to, if you're a danger to yourself, I suppose they can watch you and make sure that you can't hurt yourself. And it's not any fault of their own. I have talked in many videos how there's a huge divide between psychology and the medical community and the spiritual community. And really, we do need to have those bridged, that gap bridged. And so the more people that wake up and are able to create a bridge between those two things is going to benefit humanity as a whole, because the last thing that is going to help you is if you're misdiagnosed as having some sort of condition or psychotic break or schizophrenia when you don't have that. What you actually are going through is a spiritual emergency. Now, I'm not saying that all people that have psychosis or start hearing things are not having a psychosis or, you know, something mentally wrong with them. Those conditions 100% exist. So please do check yourself out if you actually think that you're having that. I knew I was having a spiritual awakening, even though when you're on a spiritual awakening, you'll question time and time again, what's happening to me? Am I on a spiritual awakening? What's going on? The confusion, the complexity, the loss of what's going down in your brain. And one resource that I found very beneficial was watching multiple times Christina Lope's spiritual awakening videos. She has a lot that she talks about spiritual awakenings and spiritual crises and ego death and what you can experience. And she herself talks a lot about how she went through very dark periods in her own spiritual awakening, where if she hadn't have had the medical background that she had. So she's an example of somebody who's bridging the traditional medical community with the spiritual community, because her background was in the medical field, and she was trained in the medical field. And then when she went through a spiritual awakening, she knew, okay, I'm not schizophrenic, I'm having a spiritual awakening. And so she guided herself through the process, much like I have through this. So please hop over and use the resource that is Christina Lopes. She's got thousands of videos and different playlists for spiritual awakenings and for empaths and highly sensitive people and what to do. And I even took her course called Awaken. It's a very good course to take if you're looking for information on the process of a spiritual awakening and the stages and tools that you can use along the path. I found it a hugely beneficial resource. After this episode in March, it took me probably another 6 months to understand what was happening to me, and I was routinely having these, what can only be described as self-healings, on a nightly basis, wherein I'd be channeling spirit and ancestors and start speaking in light language and performing self-healings as things were being cleared from me. And the more things that were being cleared from me, the more I understood what was happening to me. But it took about 6 months to fully grasp what was going on, and that I was what's known as an initiation awakening or a shaman's awakening. It was the process that I was on, or a healer's awakening. And the first rule of being a healer is heal thyself. So I was doing all kinds of these self-healings, and sometimes they were quite violent. They were very scary. They could be at times very overwhelming, because it felt like I was getting booted out of my body, and I was being replaced by the energies of an ancestor who was doing the healings for me. So when I say I was doing the healings, I can't really take credit, because it was more like I was booted out of my consciousness and looking at myself while somebody's in me speaking, and the me part of me that's outside of myself was terrified and not enjoying the process. Because when you're not raised with this type of channeling abilities and these extrasensory skills, it's scary. It's not something that you know how to manage. It's not something that you can go to like Hogwarts school and learn these things. If there was a Hogwarts school for me, I certainly would have attended it and gotten a lot more skills. So you all of a sudden are dealing with stuff that you can't understand. Kind of like X-Men. And that's probably a reason why all these movies are coming out for people. You know, Spirit has downloaded them into the writers so that we can be prepared for similar stuff in our own lives spiritually through this mass awakening. I suppose they're tools in their own right. So you need to learn how to manage your skills. You need to learn how to navigate through what is very out there sometimes, very extreme. And not only was I doing healings on myself, I was doing healings on other people around me, and I have been observed. And if somebody were to see me doing these, I have no doubt they would have thought that I was like, woo. At least I thought I was woo. For a while I was attending a women's circle, and it was difficult for me to attend because I would tap into what other people were feeling and energetically need to purge stuff on their behalf. At times I would be bawling my eyes out, or I would have to leave and I would have to clear the energy because I was like a channel, and it was just flowing through me, and I would be seeing exactly stuff on a psychic level that they weren't telling me about, but I knew. That was a little bit overwhelming and hard to navigate. So throughout, from March until fall, I had 4 of these severe spiritual emergencies wherein it was so dark that I thought for sure I must be dying, or that death was imminent, or that terrible things were going to happen to me. And if I didn't have the support of some select few people that have shown up for me on this journey, I don't know if I would have made it. I don't think that I would have. I really don't. There are 3 earth angels that were sent to me, heaven sent from divine, that really guided me through the darkest of the dark, when the worst possible memories would flood, while spirit and those spirits, I finally managed to clear that one spirit that was with me for I think she was with me for about 6 months. And I finally managed to get her out of me and into the light. And that was its own, what is happening? And so I managed to free myself from very difficult situations. And I was able to learn how to effectively clear and stand in my own power. Because there were days, nights, weeks where I was in bed, basically almost to the point of under the covers, listening to chant music, had sacred smoke burning, had million crystals in my bed, and thinking for sure, and just in a state of continual prayer for weeks on end, like continual prayer, calling on all, God, Jesus, Mother Mary, St. John of the Cross, who went through his own dark night of the soul. He is the gentleman that coined the term dark night of the soul, and many more, and any that would listen, like all the angels I'd be calling on at different times. And I was in a state of continual prayer for days, thinking the worst of the worst you can possibly imagine, just trying to stay alive, just trying to breathe, just get through today, just everything's going to be okay, just get through today, you just need to get through just get through this hour, please help me get through this hour. And it's beyond overwhelming, it's beyond terrifying when you have this negative energies that are coming at you and you don't know how to shield yet, which is why please go check out that video on spiritual work, because I have shieldings and clearings that work in there. And ultimately it came down to me learning how to stand in my power and say, I am a sovereign being. I am a sovereign being of light. I am a sovereign. I absolutely am saying no. And that took a lot of time and effort and energy and work. And it's still something that I get tested on routinely. Are you sure you're strong? And so even just this last weekend, I went through another round of ego death, and I just did a video on that yesterday. And in that process, I had to, again, stand in the power, stand in my truth, stand in the light, and withstand what feels exceptionally overwhelming. And that you're being influenced from negative energies that are trying to like dissuade you. So I don't want to scare anyone, but I do want you to be aware of this journey is fraught with some difficult trials and tribulations, which are designed in a way to make you stronger and make you be able to stand in your own personal power. It's like a training ground for warriors. It's boot camp, this spiritual awakening stuff, so that you can become way more empowered, because as light workers, as empaths, as starseeds, as highly sensitive people, as twin flames, or all of the above, or a mixture of some therein, you are going to be tested. That is absolute on this path, and it's for a purpose. It's to make you stronger. It's to make you have better boundaries, especially if you're an empath and you've gone through your life with like people pleasing and fawning and enmeshment with others where you have no boundaries whatsoever. So learning to have healthy boundaries and saying, no, this is not acceptable, not only to the world around you in the 3-dimensional world, but also in the 5-dimensional world, where there's shadow stuff at play and energies at play, negative energies at play, so that you can become an actual light warrior. You can become strong enough to withstand the influence of others. People talk about energy vampires, and I look at actually some narcissistic characters as not only vampires, which is like the obvious one, and I would have always called my mother an energy vampire, you know, that it was like that show True Blood, where she would let him feast off of her for a little bit and then go, okay, that's enough, you've had your fill for the day, you know. So my daily phone calls that I used to have to do was like, okay, take your fill, okay, that's enough, okay, gotta go, bye. And then nurse, whatever jabs she had said to me that particular day. But what I've learned in this process is people can be in negative energy, and it's not always as obvious as that. It's quite covert. And I see narcissism that plays out almost sometimes more like a fungus that gets in, and once it gets in, it gets under your skin. It's really hard to get rid of. I've also seen people that show up in a way of like a louse. Lice embed themselves in everything. They get in, they impregnate the situation, and then it's very difficult to clear off a lice infection. But it's subtle. It's not something obvious and pronounced as noticeable as, or a leech, somebody who's always on the take and always sucking you for something, and then when you walk away, why do I always feel tired and depleted after seeing this person and being with this person? So to be aware that narcissism or negative people show up in your life in different forms, and it's not always obvious. Covert narcissism is a very difficult energy to see. I also see and understand that narcissism is very much a play of individuals that have been infiltrated by dark energy, and they listen to that. You have the little angel and your little devil on your shoulder. They listen to that little devil telling them to do horrible things, and they do it instead of listening to the angel. So we're always being tested without our conscious necessarily awareness that we're being pushed to maybe do something we shouldn't do, or pushed into the light. And we have free will to listen to which side we're going to listen to. Learning healthy boundaries is a necessary process for all empaths, because empaths have negated self throughout their life for survival, to keep themselves alive. In so doing, have become blinded to the energies of these energy suckers that are coming in with infiltration of negative energy. And so you need to learn how to protect yourself in the 3D realm as well as the 5D realm and all the spiritual realms. And to do that, you require not only physical boundaries and putting your foot down and standing up for yourself and develop authenticity and saying, no, I'm not going to take that anymore, to not just people, but to the spiritual realm. So a spiritual emergency is when everything goes way off track and sends you deep into the dark pits of confusion. You may feel like you're going insane. You may feel like you're losing your marbles. You may feel like you're terrified. You may have any number of physical symptoms. You may have any number of out there extreme spiritual situations of dealing with spirits that have passed on, or negative energies and negative entities, and dealing with things that you don't know how to deal with. It may overtake you, as is a feeling that I can say, and you wonder what you're supposed to do. So other than going and watching my video on that spiritual work, which I'm going to recommend, learning healthy boundaries on all levels, including shielding yourself and clearing your energy, protecting yourself through the power of prayer, intent, and empowerment. The more you stand in your own personal light, the more empowered you become, the stronger you'll be able to be. No, there is no power greater than me, because we are the light. So there is no power greater than the light, because the light can always penetrate darkness. It's not the other way around. Dark can't penetrate a light place, but light can penetrate the dark. So to all the light workers and spiritual warriors and empaths and twin flames, if you're struggling on this journey and need some help and assistance in learning some better boundary and not getting sucked into all the fear. So there's another little point I'm going to add to this exceptionally long video, but that's okay. Is the more you buy into the fear of like, oh, I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't, and isolate. And yes, you will need to isolate for a period of time until you gain strength. But ultimately, our mission is in the matrix. Our mission is to show up in the world. So if we all perpetually spend the rest of our lives running away and hermiting, then we're not actually doing our mission. Our mission is to sit in front of a camera and not be worried that somebody's going to psychically attack me. And if they do, well, there is no power greater than me. There is no power greater than me. I am stronger than any negative or psychic attacks that somebody wants to throw at me, because that's my mission, is to sit in front of a camera. And it's my mission to go out into the world. And it's my mission to show up and be a light in the 3D world. It's not our job to run away and isolate in a cabin in the woods. And listen, I would love to run away and isolate in a small cabin in the woods, and I would have a little goat named Gandalf, and I would live very happily in complete isolation. I really, really, totally would. I could dig that. Or I could like run away and live in a camper van and move down to Costa Rica and live in a treehouse. I'd be as happy as Larry, but I wouldn't be doing my job. I wouldn't be showing up and doing mission, which is to sit in front of this camera throughout my awakening and show that I am strong enough to push through the fears, and I am strong enough to stand up for what is right and stand up for what is the light and the light's mission. So if you need help to get into your mission as a light worker, feel free to set up a Zoom call. The way to do that is in the description below. And let's have a discussion about some of the blocks that are preventing you from being fully empowered as a sovereign being of light. All my services are via donation. Reasonable donation, please. I greatly appreciate it. Everything goes towards supporting my family. And if you want to have Oracle read and see what Spirit has to say, and that leaves it into the hands of Spirit for their own guidance, we can do that as well via Zoom call. We can set that up. Send me off a message and say, hey, I want to try an Oracle read and see what Spirit has to say. Let me know. Otherwise, if you want to join the Spiritual Warrior Support Group so you can talk to other warriors and perhaps put out a question of, hey, I'm dealing with this, are you dealing with this? Because all this isolation, the problem is nobody's communicating to each other. And the stronger we will be as a collective. So don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer on your own when there are others going through the exact same thing that you are at the exact same time, practically. We're on a wave. There are multiple waves of this awakening, and I'm on wave 2. So probably are you. Or you're on wave 3 and you're starting to stir and wake up right now. If If you want to understand more about the waves, that's Dolores Cannon, and you can go to her YouTube and check out her teachings on the 3 waves of volunteers. Because if you're going through profound spiritual awakening right now, that is you. The earth needs you. We need you. We need you to be in mission. We need you to stand up and start speaking your truth and start sharing your truth, because the more people that are like me that can stand up and say these things that may sound a little wackadoodle or a little bit crazy to some of your family or friends, the more you're helping your community, and your people are looking for you. There's thousands of people out there lost in the dark, and the more lights that we have to illuminate the path, there's no shortage of space up here for other people to be standing in their power and sending out messages in whatever way that works for you, whether it be a YouTube channel, whether that be writing on social media, whether that be running community groups in your local communities, whether that be teaching through yoga, meditations, any type of spiritual teachings. We need more teachers, whether that be healing. We need more healers. Are you a healer? Perhaps you're being called to step up and move into a healer's journey. Whatever it is, you are a way shower. All those that are waking up are way showers. And first we need to get ourselves out of the dark and into the light so that we can stand strong. And then we go back into the dark to help the others get out of the dark. And we do that by standing in our own power. So with that said, I'm wishing everybody a whole bunch of love and light and this journey, and peace out.